Hi, my name is Ronnie. Welcome to my YouTube channel. When I take a close look, I can see pretty easily a direct correlation between my state of well-being and my engagement in a regular journaling practice. Strangely enough, putting the pen to paper can actually be a challenge for me, and I've often had to reach the end of my rope and the ends of many other people's ropes before I start to write. My journaling started somewhere in my teenage years and consumed huge amounts of time. I wrote in 5 subject notebooks, and college ruled, mind you. I filled multiple notebooks every year. I cried a lot back then. I wrote a lot of poetry. And I don't do so much of either of those things at this point in my life. I'm having this very realization by writing the script for this video and recording myself reading it. And just that's what I've learned journaling does for me. In my younger years, I wasn't really sure what it did per se, but I knew I was drawn to it. I knew that every time I opened that notebook, something would soon be flowing. Oftentimes it was my hardest feelings. I would describe my heart-wrenching thoughts and emotions, and I'd get the tears going, and the sobbing would make the words more dramatic and feed the cycle on and on. And so I gained a little prejudice against the practice of journaling. I saw it as a tool that I couldn't really be trusted with because it just took me straight down into the pits of my own loneliness and heartbreak. Furthermore, all of my friends had live journal accounts, so the practice of journaling got mixed up with early social media drama, fighting in the comments section. So I let the practice go for like 5 or 6 years. I think from like age 21 to 26, and I tumbled through the highway pileup of what my college years had become. And I turned my back on very promising career opportunities while I frolicked happily into extremely costly romantic relationships. I let partying and substance use and addiction, especially screen addiction, cover up those feelings that I used to put down in my journal. Uh, you see, I thought it was an improvement because without the journaling, I was no longer twisting that knife in my misery, crying all the time. The first time I got drunk, I was alone, and I actually went straight to my live journal and made a drunk post about what I was experiencing at that moment. As more time passed in life, I kept on getting drunk, but I also stopped expressing my thoughts and emotions. Then when I was 27 or 28, I was many layers deep by now. I was running away from the life that I was running away from. And a friend gifted me a journal. I was living in a community at that time, a community of artists who made a big deal about a person's Saturn return at the age of 28. And this was a beautiful handmade leather-bound journal with nothing but empty pages. For anything I could pretend to remember about this book from 12 years ago, I remember the sheer amount of empty pages and the thought that I wasn't going to use it. I couldn't. I didn't journal. That's what I thought. I don't journal. I can't. Can't do that because I'll just use it to make myself feel worse. Luckily, I soon saw a small break in that pattern of thought, and I guess I realized that even if I used it poorly, even if my dumb scribblings sullied this beautiful piece of handmade art, I could just as easily discard it full of me trying as I could discard it completely unused. And I don't know how long it took, but I don't even know how consistent I really was with it. But I eventually filled up the whole journal. Came a point where every single page had something written on it. And I actually had not fallen into that pit of despair that would constantly make me feel worse. I had actually noticed that I was finding life more manageable with this regular journaling practice. It was kind of like the seed had been planted in my adolescence, in my need to return to the book, to return to the page again and again and again, no matter how much it hurt. And now, years later, what began to sprout was the message that this writing practice can actually improve my quality of life. And that's how journaling came back into my life. But by that age, mid to late 20s, I had already invested serious time in cementing in place some heavy practices of self-sabotage. So even to this day, there are long stretches of time where I don't write. I don't pick up the journal. And notably, there's a buildup if I don't find my way back to it in time. But it also doesn't look like it did back in my childhood. It's not the same practice anymore. You know, I don't buy 5 subject college ruled notebooks and fill them up front to back, cover to cover. My journal these days is any one of 4 or 5 notebooks or pieces of paper I have lying around my house. I don't always face the blank page head on either. I've learned there are some fantastic prompt journals out there with questions or writing suggestions. I've drawn, I've colored, maybe I've pulled a rune stone to write about it, or focused on one of my recovery program questions as a starting point. So, why does this practice work for me, I wonder? Or how? Why? Why or My thought process seems to be a never-ending ticker tape. I don't have to think in full sentences. And no sooner does one thought begin, that two or three others pile up on top of it in succession until even a good, useful thought is pretty quickly killed on the spot. Writing, on the other hand, writing requires me to put letters into words, and those words will make sentences. Those sentences will make thoughts, and those thoughts will form a greater process. And somehow I can actually set aside my mental rumination and self-criticism for enough time to finish a written sentence in a way that's very challenging for me to do if I'm just thinking. Another lesson from my journaling has been, if I am scared to write about something in my own personal journal, it is probably an area of my life that will improve if I write about it. I don't remember who gave me this advice, but I was told to use the journal prompt. I don't feel like journaling because ... If I put those words at the top of a page and I allow myself to finish that sentence intuitively and honestly, I can almost certainly end up with a list written in my own handwriting of the topics I actually want to address within myself, even though they're hidden behind a barricade of fear or doubt or low self-esteem. And I don't have to head straight for the gnarliest item on the list either. I don't have to isolate in my healing. I've found that this journaling practice, this journaling work, multiplies its effectiveness in a system that includes therapy and support groups. I get better at it with practice too. The things that used to look untouchable, even in a private diary, are now within reach. I'm reminded of something Fred Rogers said. Anything mentionable is manageable. Lastly, I've learned that journaling, like sports, is a category. Finding the healing we need, we want, we deserve can be tough work. And I meet people who say, I don't like groups or prayer or meditation or journaling. But if I replace those words for the word sports, I understand that someone who's really passionate about shuffleboard does not necessarily need to love water polo. There are as many types of prayer, meditation, groups, and journaling practices as there are people on the path. So, to wrap this up, I want to know from you, what's your journaling practice? It might not be journaling. What serves this purpose for you? The purpose of regulating the speed of your thought process and gently altering its direction. What allows you to highlight the areas of need in your life and along your path? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, calmate turista.